Good afternoon. Welcome to the special meeting of the San Francisco Public Library Commission for July 9th, 2020. Regularly scheduled Library Commission meeting for July 16th is canceled. The time is 4:30 p.m. My name is Michael Lambert, your city librarian. In the absence of having an incumbent staff member serving in the capacity of Library Commission Secretary, I will be serving as the default Library Commission Secretary this evening. Due to the COVID-19 health emergency and to protect library commissioners, staff, and the public, the San Francisco Main Library and the Corrett Auditorium are closed. However, members will be participating in the meeting remotely. This precaution is taken pursuant to the statewide stay-at-home order and all preceding and proceeding local, state, and federal orders, declarations, and directives. Commissioners will attend the meeting through video conference and participate in the meeting to the same extent as if they were physically present. Public comment will be available for each item on the agenda. Members of the public can observe the meeting using the Webex system by following the link in the library's event calendar or by calling 1-408-418-9388 and entering the access code for this specific meeting. The access code for today's meeting is 146-665-5451. When connected by phone, members of the public can dial *3 to be added to the public comment queue. Individuals joining via Webex should click the raise hand button in the lower right-hand portion of the participant panel in order to be added to the queue. Best practices for all public commenters are to call from a quiet location, speak clearly and slowly, and turn down your television or radio. Each commenter will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. All commenters will remain on mute until their line is open. In facilitating this meeting this evening and to assist in moderating public comment, I will be joined for operations support by the library's digital strategist, Bill Kolb. Mr. Kolb will be calling upon members of the public by name or by caller number to prompt each attendee who wishes to provide public comment. Emailed public comments have also been posted to the Library Commission's webpage, along with the agenda and explanatory documents. The chat function built into Webex will not be monitored by commissioners or presenters and is not intended as a channel for providing comment or feedback to the commission. Commissioners and presenters will not respond to content added to the chat. I will now commence with roll call. Library commissioners in attendance are President Wardell Giraduzzi, Vice President Susan Mall, Commissioners Ono, Lee, Wong, and Wolf. The Library Commission currently has one vacancy. And now I will turn it over to Madam President.
Thank you so much, City Librarian Lambert. Hello and welcome to this special meeting of the San Francisco Public Library Commission. It is on July 9th. I want to thank you to the members of the public who are attending this meeting remotely. If you have not done so, all the materials for this meeting are available for download on the Library Commission page of the library's website at sfpl.org. We have a total of 4 agenda items today. So we are going to begin with item number 1 on the agenda. And at this time, we will open it up for general comment. Members of the public who wish to provide general public comment should raise their hands in order to be added to the queue. If you are using WebEx interface, click the raise hand button that you'll see in the lower right-hand portion of the screen. If you've called into WebEx, dial in at the number 1-408-418-9388 and then press *3 to line up to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Operations is checking to see if there are any callers in the queue. If you have not already done so, please raise your hand in WebEx or press *3 to be added to the queue. For those already on hold in the queue, please continue to wait until it is your turn to speak. Operations?
There are 5 speakers in the queue. Would you like to begin with public comment?
Yes, please, operations.
Zima, you have been unmuted and your 3 minutes begins now.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Emma Avalos. I'm a children's librarian at the Mission Bay branch, but today I'm speaking not as an SFPL staff member, but as a woman of color who grew up in National City, a majority Black and brown town that is on the losing side of California's digital divide and is currently being ravaged by COVID-19. As the city and county of San Francisco are called upon to defund the police, I'm asking the Library Commission to push the city to instead use these funds to increase internet connectivity and access to our city's disenfranchised communities, and to support the library in the expansion of non-web-based services, such as telephone reference and books by mail during this public health crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, operations. Please continue allowing general public comment.
Call-in user, your 3 minutes begins now.
Okay, this is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. We can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. I'd appreciate if you gave me a 30-second warning.
No.
Is that okay? I guess I don't get an answer about mechanics on this new technology. Fine. The library has lost its way. The management certainly has lost its way on a whole range of things that libraries are supposed to do and even ethically are required to do, but that this library does not do. So, for example, the slogan, SFPL system is dedicated to free and equal access. Well, the folks who are not on a computer and who don't have telephone notifications have gotten zero information from the library about what's going on in the library, what's open and what's not open, what's planned to be open, and so on, while folks with email have been getting messages galore. This phone call to participate in this meeting, although other agencies have set up free local landlines or 800 numbers, this is a 408 area code, which from my landline in San Francisco costs 59 cents a minute plus tax to connect with your meeting. That's a very big expense and it adds up very fast. With respect to the impact of the lack of paper notices, literally people could have died as a result of not knowing, for example, that the library is closed and the book drops are closed. A conscientious library patron might have tried to bring some books that are due back, not knowing what's going on or figuring at least the book drop is open. Schlepped the books over to the local branch or the main library and found that not only the whole library but the book drops are closed as well, and then had to schlep all the way home, maybe getting on a bus, a crowded bus, and on the way getting infected by coronavirus and ultimately dying from COVID-19. All because they didn't know what the email people did know. The Digital Equity Strategic Plan for 2019 to 24 from the city shows that more than 100,000 people do not have basic access to the internet from home. And as you can imagine, the wealthiest people have the most, the poorest have the least. Racially, the minorities have the least, and the white folks the most, and older people.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Operations, is there another commenter?
Edward, your 3 minutes begins now. Edward Hasbrook, your 3 minutes has already started. Madam President, the commenter doesn't appear to have audio function. I'm canceling that one. I'm going to start on the next person.
Thank you, Operations.
Harini, your 3 minutes begins now.
Can you hear me? Okay, so this is a statement from Mark Robert Wong and Emily Robert Wong. We are speaking on behalf of Teen Tech SF, a student-led nonprofit empowering the next generation of tech innovators and civic entrepreneurs. We're committed to equal access to tech for all teens. Teen Tech SF meets monthly at The Mix, SFPL's Teen Digital Resource Center and Makerspace. The Mix is near and dear to our hearts because we were founding members of the SFPL Board of Advising Youth and intimately involved with the initiation and design of The Mix. Proud of the impact The Mix has had in the teen community, bringing many students to the library as a vibrant hub for interaction, learning, and access to digital resources and skills. Students will never think of the library as a boring, old-fashioned place. Mix is one way the library will continue to grow and thrive, connecting with future generations. Like SF, the Mix also provides equal access to digital resources and opportunities to a diverse population of at-risk and underserved groups that otherwise might not engage in digital activities. The Mix is a critical space for students who may not otherwise have access to these resources, to sharpen their skills and turn their big ideas into reality. During COVID-19, Teen Tech SF has joined forces with two other student-led organizations, Curiosity Robotics and Masks for All, to fabricate face shields using Tinkercad and 3D printing and hand-sewn cloth face masks, and for distribution to hospital staff, first responders, essential workers, students, and the most vulnerable members of the community. It would be amazing to have access to the Mix's 3D printers when not in use to teach students the basics of 3D printing and computer-aided design while they fabricate much-needed PPE. We have access to a sewing machine that we would be able to use at the Mix to hold tutorials on how to sew cloth masks. When it's safe for staff and students, we would like to use the Mix as our base of operations for carefully scheduled, small-scale workshops for students who are already in the same COVID-19 pod. Expand the number of volunteers available to make masks and face shields with materials supplied by the PayPal Gives grant. COVID is surging in California, and we all need to do what we can to stop the spread. At Teen Tech SF, we say it's your ideas, not your age, that matter. We are young, but we are ready to do what we can and would love to expand our partnership with the Mix and fight COVID-19 together. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Operation, is there another commenter?
Yes, Madam President. Reha, your 3 minutes begins now.
I would just like to emphasize how important the Mix is to Teen Tech SF and to gain access to these materials to continue to educate and empower the future generation with tech. It would be amazing to have access to the Mix's 3D printer when not in use to teach the students the basics of 3D printing and computer-aided design while they fabricate much-needed PPE. We would love to have access to a sewing machine that we would be able to use at the Mix to hold tutorials on how to sew cloth masks. As COVID is surging, we would love to expand our partnership with the Mix. And please note that Teen Tech SF is a student-led nonprofit empowering the next generation of tech entrepreneurs. And without the Mix, we would love to expand our partnership with the Mix. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Operations, is there another commenter?
Yes, Madam President. Call-in user, your 3 minutes begins now.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Luis Zuniga. Hello, my name is Luis Zuniga. I am a 3610 member, a staff member of the public library. And my comment actually has to do with two items. Yesterday, I was actually, I met with one of our wonderful patrons a lady who actually works here at Excelsior Works, an organization that actually sort of serves the community, the underserved, immigrants, recent immigrants, and people who are actually, for the most part, have been heavily impacted by COVID-19 and by the economic aspects of the pandemic. And she was actually redistributing food from her house, even as she actually sometimes does it through Excelsior Works. And she was actually pointing out how the community, her community, has actually been impacted by the lack of access that this underserved community actually sort of suffers with respect to lack of service of the public library. And right now, even though we are in the process of opening up for curbside pickup, there appear to be no contingencies to actually serve these communities, which actually may not have remote access, connectivity, and the such. And imagine how disappointed she will be when actually I point out to her that our union, the union that actually serves the staff of the library, was apparently not party to the discussions of the actual opening up. Imagine how she will actually feel to know that the opacity of our current leadership has actually served to, in fact, delay the opening because of the fact that we are going to actually be involved in these bureaucratic discussions. These people actually depend on us, and I hope that we, as pillars of the community, we can actually bring these services back to them with enough speed and alacrity which they deserve. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Operations, is there another commenter?
President, there's one additional commenter. Call-in user, your 3 minutes begins now.
Hello, this is Edward Hasbrook. I'm a longtime San Francisco resident and an author. I did try to call in on Webex, and that wasn't working for your information. But anyway, I spoke to you at your December 2019 meeting about the harm being done to authors by the practices endorsed by the San Francisco Public Library of making and distribution of digital copies without permission and in violation of authors' copyrights by the Internet Archive under the misleading label of so-called controlled digital lending. Although Mr. Lambert and Ms. Cocking were kind enough to meet with me after that meeting, they said that they would need to consult with the Internet Archive to begin to get answers to most of the questions and issues that I'd raised, and nothing has happened since. I've heard nothing further. But while I understand and appreciate that most of this meeting is, as it should be, about the plans for when and if it becomes possible for the library to reopen, and while I want to start by thanking the library staff for their commitment and urging the Library Commission to give as much consideration to the health and safety and risks to library staff as those of the public, it's also important to note that already during this pandemic, the Internet Archive has exploited the pandemic as a pretext for greatly expanding their attack on authors' rights and our livelihoods, and has continued to use the endorsement of the San Francisco Public Library, among others, to lend greater legitimacy to its activities. So the pandemic has greatly heightened the importance of having the kind of debate that there was not before the San Francisco Public Library put its imprimatur on these infringing practices by the Internet Archive. And so I hope that you will begin now to plan a robust, thorough debate, discussion, and vote by the Library Commission as to whether to continue to endorse the attack on writers in San Francisco and around the world who are being impacted by these practices that you have endorsed and which are actually being expanded today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Operations, is there another commenter?
Madam President, there appear to be 2 additional commenters.
Okay, thank you.
Charlene, your 3 minutes begins now.
Thank you. I have a short comment. I am a 3602 at the San Francisco Public Library, and the information that I'm able to gather from a lack of information coming to some of the employees is that the management of the affairs of the library seem to be prioritizing the disaster service work over serving our community as a library. And following with the comment about Excelsior, I think that's a great example of us not serving our community as a library. And my second comment is about the union seemingly not being invited to the table around the DSW work or the opening of the library. And there's been a lot of hardship on library workers who are not able to do the DSW type work and are then cut off from their paid furlough. So there's been a lot of issues in terms of the library labor and the community. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Operations, is there another commenter?
There's one more, Madam President. Call-in user, your 3 minutes begins now.
Good evening, Library Commissioners. I'm very concerned with the digital divide that you are promoting against your own policies and the memo that Michael Lambert issued early this year to provide for equal access for information for those without internet and by way of paper notices, which you are failing to provide. I'm also very concerned with, as with the last speaker spoke, about the lack of consultation with the staff and the employees of the library about your supposed reopening. If you have an obligation to provide an accountability with when any item is returned, as you have always done so when the library was open. If a patron returns an item, you have an obligation. It's a common law, common sense practice. If I return an item, you must give me a receipt that proves I have returned it. So there can be no misunderstanding or possible legal action if an item is lost or stolen. These are very serious legal issues that you need to address before you reopen, even for curbside service. I'm still very, very concerned with the digital divide that you're promoting, which is really bound to result in a legal action. A court, maybe you would respect a court order to treat all patrons with the same free and equal access. I was already disconnected from this line. I'm also protesting that you should make this available at a toll-free phone line, not a toll line, as the other patron complained. I'm also complaining. This is a disgrace and reveals more and more your illegal practice of discriminating against low-income seniors and disabled who don't have access to toll-free phone line. I hope you will address these issues seriously and don't have to go to another level of action with the government to see that you do your job. Good luck.
Thank you. Are there any further more requests for comment?
President, that concludes the list of commenters.
Okay, thank you so much. Hearing no further requests for comment, general public comment is now closed. So, okay, we're going to move on to our item number 2 on our agenda, and that is the SFPL reopening plan discussion. This is a discussion on the library's plans for reopening. You have explanatory documents that are available to you. One of them is a city librarian memo dated July 6, 2020, as well as some site-specific health and safety plan for the Excelsior branch library, a site-specific health and safety plan, city offices safety protocol, and the resumption of limited library service, which is SFPL to go. So I'm going to turn over to our city librarian.
Thank you, President Wardell. At the June 18 Library Commission meeting, you may recall that library staff offered an initial update on reopening efforts to resume public services. Today's report regarding the phased reopening of library services is meant to provide a status update to share progress since last month's meeting. In your packets, as you mentioned, you have a memo pertaining to the phased reopening for library services, as well as our draft reopening plan. Library staff has been working hard the past few weeks on the development of the site-specific health and safety plans for the main library and our first site-specific health and safety plan for a neighborhood branch library. Beyond the main, the Excelsior branch library is slated to be our initial pilot location for SFPL to go. These plans are also part of your packet. I should also mention that there was a small revision to the floor plan for the Excelsior's site-specific health and safety plan, as well as a correction to the staffing addendum. The updated explanatory document is now posted on the website. I am thrilled to report some late-breaking news. As of yesterday morning, these two health and safety plans were approved by the Office of the City Administrator. Next slide, please. Now, I am very pleased to be presenting to you today an overview of our plan to resume limited library services via our contact-free service model we're calling SFPL to go. This plan will allow us to meet some critical needs in our community for access to physical collections and resume circulation of physical items through holds pickup at select SFPL locations. As city librarian, I am fully aware of how anxious library staff and our beloved patrons are for reopening library services in our community. And I'm excited that we're now on the precipice of launching this service. Next slide, please. The library's reopening plan will align with the 5 progress indicators developed by the Department of Public Health.
Oh my God.
As the city sees the number of COVID-19 patients decreasing over a sustained period of time, and as the city increases contact tracing, testing, and PPE capacity, the library will be poised for ever greater progressive resumption of services. A key step in the approval process for limited reopening has been crafting the health and safety plans for each location that we propose to open. In your packets, you have the health and safety plans for the first SFPL to go sites, the main and the Excelsior branch library. As I mentioned, these plans have now been approved and will serve as templates for additional library locations to come online. Next slide, please. In your packet, you have the SFPL reopening plan developed by the Public Services Chiefs. On page 3 of this plan, you'll see this overview of the phased restoration of library services, which identifies the phases of public service that correspond with the health indicators that will guide us to an eventual return to full library service. As you know from our June meeting, despite our closure, we have continued operations, including information services by email and phone, creation of digital access library cards on demand, providing rich e-resources, and an array of virtual public programming. In addition, our internal management team and operations staff, security, engineers, IT, custodial, finance, HR personnel have never stopped working. Other personnel from the Community Programs and Partnerships Division and the Collections and Technical Services Divisions have also continued performing their job functions throughout this closure period. As you can see, we are currently in phase 1, preparation for limited service. Now that our plans have been approved by the City Administrator's Office, we are ready to move into Phase 2 in the coming weeks for contact-free service, SFPL to go. Next slide, please. During this preparation phase, we've been working to identify the optimal public service locations and making plans to ensure staff workspaces conform with the city's guidance for workplace safety and social distancing during the COVID emergency. Next slide, please. In determining which branch locations will reopen for the initial phase of SFPL to go, we prioritized equity, coverage, and facility design. Fortunately, the Recreation and Parks Department has developed criteria for determining equity zones in the city, which we've been able to leverage in prioritizing locations in the city with higher percentages of the population shown to be in vulnerable categories and most in need of library services due to socioeconomic factors. We considered equity from a linguistic perspective as well, identifying locations with extensive non-English language collections to ensure access to those physical materials. We also looked at the geographic distribution of the selected sites around the city to ensure that every supervisory district has at least one open branch. Finally, we considered the physical layouts of each location to determine which branches have adequate space and clear sight lines within the facility so that staff can work together while remaining safe and socially distanced per the city's guidelines. Next slide, please. With the aforementioned prioritization of equity zones, coverage, and building design, we aspire to reopen half of the library system, or 14 of our 28 library locations in the initial Phase 2 of SFPL to go. Here's an overview of the hours and the days of the week we will be able to provide at SFPL to go locations. As you can see, the main library will be a 7-day-a-week operation, and branches will provide service 5 days per week, including Saturdays. We looked at our past visitor data to align hours with the busiest times of day. We also created a schedule that amounts to a single shift for full-time employees so we could avoid the need for overlapping teams and limit the number of staff at each site consistent with the city office's safety protocols. Each site that is open will also allow materials returns. Next slide, please. In June, the California State Library advocated for contact-free holds pickup services to be included in the state's second phase framework, along with retail and restaurant pickup. SFPL to go conforms with the guidelines developed by the California State Library and with San Francisco's local public health guidelines. Patrons will be able to request the items they wish to borrow first by phone, email, or online. Library staff at the telephone information program will assist patrons in gaining access to collections. The requested materials will be pulled from the shelves at our open locations and sent to the patron's requested pickup location. Patrons will be notified when the items are ready for pickup and will visit our open locations to pick up their materials while remaining outside the branch from an ADA accessible table at the library's front doors. All materials returned in the book drops will be quarantined for 72 hours before staff handles the returns. Next slide, please. You can see here a floor plan for pickup service at the main library, which is set to take place at the Larkin Street entrance. Patrons will queue up outside the main library at designated points 6 feet apart so that they can be served by staff at the front door without entering the library. Next slide, please. And this is an example of the flow of materials behind the scenes to prepare them for pickup at the front door of the Excelsior Branch Library. Next slide, please. Library staff has developed safety guidelines for staff and patrons. Currently, all SFPL staff must do a health screening certification before being allowed to start work for the day. Each library location will have an on-site custodian to wipe down any surfaces and ensure the buildings have routine cleaning throughout the day. We've also structured the workflow to minimize the number of staff who touch any item that is being prepared for checkout. Staff will work at designated workstations and will follow the materials handling guidelines for all SFPL to-go locations. All materials will be pre-checked out and bagged so patrons can grab their requested materials and go. Patrons who use this service will be required to wear facial coverings, and patrons will be queued up for the service outside the building. Next slide, please. Our staff has relied heavily on scientific research and data in developing the safe materials handling guidelines. This information was guided by the Reopening Archives, Libraries, and Museums, or REALM study, commissioned by the Institute of Museums and Library Services and OCLC, a global library cooperative. This group partnered with Battelle, a leading science research firm, to test how COVID-19 interacts with a selection of materials commonly found in archives, libraries, and museums. The study identified methods of handling and remediation. Phase 1 testing focused on the most commonly used material in libraries, including hardcover books, paperback books, paper pages inside a closed book, Mylar covers, and DVD cases. Next slide, please. What we learned from the REALM study is that as soon as one day after having exposure to the COVID-19 virus, the volume of the virus on the surface of library materials dropped significantly, falling below the lowest concentration that can be accurately measured under the specified experimental conditions. The results of the test are shown here in this chart. As you can see, after one day, there was no recoverable virus for the hardcover book, the paperback book, or the DVD case. By day 3, all 5 tested material surfaces resulted in no recoverable virus. 72-hour delays for processing will be worked into our safe materials handling procedures to ensure the safety of our staff and patrons. Phase 2 of the REALM study testing started June 23rd and include Braille paper pages, glossy paper pages, magazine pages, children's board books, and archival folders. Results are expected later this month. We are highly confident that the SFPL to-go service model will ensure the health and safety of our staff and patrons. Next slide, please. In the past few weeks, we were able to convene frontline staff to work together with library administration to help review our reopening plans. I have appreciated their efforts. This week, our labor partners from SEIU 1021 formally requested to meet and confer regarding the library's reopening plans. Moving forward, library management will engage in the meet and confer process with the involvement of the city's Department of Human Resources Employee Relations Division. Next slide, please. Commissioners, we are so pleased to finally be at this moment where we can begin promoting the SFPL to-go service. You may recognize some of the graphics repurposed here from our fabulously Find Free initiative last fall. We will be putting up banners, signage, and sidewalk markings at SFPL to-go locations featuring this branding because we feel it's going to be fabulous to see our patrons again. In closing, I look forward to soon having an exact date for reopening. With the approval secured for the main library and the Excelsior Branch Library, we'll begin recalling staff to stand up these locations, hopefully in early August. The total number of library locations set to reopen and the exact neighborhood branches are to be determined still. However, we will focus on the targeted locations identified for Phase 2, contingent upon securing additional approvals for site-specific health and safety plans from the Office of the City Administrator. These locations reopening will also be contingent upon the recall of library workers from their disaster service worker activations around the city. Our Human Resources Director, our Chief Operating Officer, and I are working collaboratively with the city's Department of Human Resources to orchestrate this return of library staff in order to resume library operations. I'm extremely proud of the contributions library personnel continue to make day in and day out of this public health emergency. I recognize many of our library workers will continue serving as disaster service workers in the weeks and months to come as we strive to balance the city's priorities for responding to the public health emergency with our own departmental goals for reopening. And that concludes my presentation, but my team and I are more than happy to answer any questions you may have following public comment.
Thank you, City Librarian Lambert, for that update on the SFPL reopening plan. Like right now, I'd like to open this up to general public comment on this particular agenda item. And then thereafter, once we've completed our public comment portion, we will open it up for a discussion with the commission. So operations, do you have a caller available for us?
Yeah, Madam President, there are 3 commenters in the queue.
Great, thank you. Let's hear from our first one.
Ayan, your 3 minutes begins now.
Hello, my name is Ayan Gates-Williams, and under normal circumstances, I work as a library technical assistant at the Merced branch. And this afternoon, I have a statement to share on behalf of the Labor Team Reentry Work Group of the San Francisco Public Library. On Monday, July 6, 2020, City Librarian Michael Lambert made public a document with our names attached to it that we did not review. The document intended for presentation at the Library Commission meeting this week describes what may be the best intentions of SFPL to go. However, we cannot in good conscience vouch for their implementation or even say that we see a path forward to achieve them at this point. In fact, the presentation epitomizes how this entire venture was a fait accompli before we were invited to participate. For this reason, the members of our work group, including Ayan Gates-Williams, that's me, Bix Warden, Doreen Kilzer-Hill, Nadia Volney, Zugu Katenge, Ophelia Moran, and Ruben Juarez, do not consent to the use of our names in management's presentation. That would be the presentation that Mr. Lambert just completed. We ask that you remove our names from any documents submitted to the Library Commission and or shared with library staff and the public in regard to SFPL to go. We initially formed this work group to represent the voices of hundreds of our colleagues who have not had an avenue to express their concerns or make recommendations for keeping our workplace safe as we reopen during a pandemic. The most important issues for our colleagues are staffing and health and safety. We hope to work collaboratively toward consensus with library management, but we have not yet had a chance to make those voices heard. The Labor Team's re-entry work group is ready and eager to resume work with the management team once our requests are met to address the change in working conditions brought on by the pandemic. And to be clear, for us, that includes union representation in the meetings that we have with management. Our workers are relying on us to bring them back to work safely, and the work group has much to offer with respect to the actual work that will be performed at each location. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next commenter.
Caller, your 3 minutes begins now.
Is this me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Judy Beck. I'm a library retiree recently. I'm still active in the union and the retiree council, the retiree chapter. I hope the commission will take note that this iteration of library management either thinks it's above the law or is ignorant of the law, meaning it is either criminal or unfit. Whichever is true, this management is poorly serving the library system in this disastrous time when we need as much skill and awareness as possible. Management has its administrative strengths, and the workers have their detailed lived knowledge of gaps and needs. And for management to forego that knowledge and then falsely claim that it has obtained through, quote, it has obtained it through, quote, collaboration, as Ayan just explained, is to recklessly, needlessly put library users and employees at risk. Since day one of shelter in place, library workers have asked for a seat at the table so their eyes, ears, and voices could contribute to the wise decisions in this abnormal, deadly situation. Not only were they put off over and over, but their union representative, also a major stakeholder and knowledge source, was denied her legal participation. The Reopen Committee that Ayan was just speaking about was denied a walkthrough of the main to determine and guide the health and safety conditions there and to spot possible problems. Why is management playing this awful power game when lives are at stake? Instead of working collaboratively in good faith, these inept and uncaring managers are skirting the concerns and valuable help of the thoughtful members of the Reopening Committee. Well, they cannot skirt the Myers-Milius-Brown Act and now are forced to meet and confer, which they should have been eager to take advantage of earlier. Because if SFPL to go or grab and go library, whatever you call it, with reduced staff, reduced work sites, reduced hours, and utterly new procedures in a pandemic isn't a change in working conditions. What is? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. The next commenter, please.
Caller, your 3 minutes begins now.
The last two comments from library employees and former employees are of grave concern to me as a dedicated patron and lover of this library. It breaks my heart to hear that really is a grave disservice to the county of San Francisco that this should be happening at all. Not to mention, I mentioned in an earlier comment that if you intend to take items into the system, you must provide the patrons with a proof that they were returned. If you don't do that, you are putting yourselves into much worse legal territory than you apparently have already done by ignoring the staff and the union. I'm very saddened and want to cry. It's so ridiculous that in a democratic society where taxpayer money is paying for this fiasco that you are perpetrating upon staff and patrons, get your act together.
Thank you for your comment. Is there another commenter?
Madam President, there are no additional commenters.
Okay. Hearing that there's no other commenters, we're going to move into our Library Commission discussion on the agenda item 2, which was an update on the SFPL reopening. And I am going to call commissioners as I see their hands are raised. And we'll go from there. So commissioners, we're currently on that emergency vehicle passed by and it's in the background of someone's environment.
Madam President, I see that Commissioner Lee and Commissioner Ono have raised their hands. So.
Okay, great. Let's have Commissioner Lee first, and then after we will have Commissioner Ono in that order. Commissioner Lee.
Yes, thank you. I would like to commend the Reopening Committee for meeting and preparing the material. And there's a lot of thought put into it, and all the research that has been done. And it's very comprehensive and very thoughtful, from all I can tell. So I am really looking forward to the launch early August. I have a couple of questions. Question number one is that there's a mention about enough staff that would return from DSW. Does that mean that if the city would have this virus reproduction rate up. Therefore, the DSW staff would not be able to come back. Would that be impacting the rollout of the opening? Is that the only adverse event?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Lee. The city is still very much in a shelter in place and operating under public health emergency orders. And the city's highest priorities include the emergency response, sheltering and feeding vulnerable populations, and preparing for the medical surge. That is the overriding priority for the city. So absolutely, the city's need for disaster service workers could impact ultimately how much we're able to scale reopening. But we've had excellent discussions with the city's Department of Human Resources, and we're working collaboratively with them to try to strike the right balance of allowing us to recall the personnel that we need for SFPL to go sites and continue supporting the city's needs for disaster service workers.
Okay. On that note, my follow-on question would be, if there is a shortage, does it mean that some branch will not be open, or all the planned 13 branches either all on at the same time, or no branch would be on, or just the main library?
The reopening,
difficult juggling act.
Exactly. You said it very well. The reopening plan, this phased approach, is fluid, and it's contingent upon a lot of variables that, quite frankly, are outside of the control of library management. We do have a plan for standing up half the library system. And one of the additional constraints in opening SFPL to-go locations is the finite amount of custodial capacity that we have, the finite amount of security capacity that we have. So we are aspiring to open up as many locations as we can in this initial phase 2, and then we can reevaluate what additional capacity we may have at our disposal and continue to bring additional branch libraries online, staffing capacity permitting.
Right. It sounded like the 13 branches, for now, there's a safety margin that you can go, but additional branches might be evaluated as and when the DSW, the demand on to keep the public safety has improved.
Yes, Commissioner Lee, and just to clarify, right now our focus is standing up the main library and Excelsior as we continue to seek approval for additional branch library locations. The exact number, the exact locations are still to be determined depending on how much staffing capacity we can recall from disaster service worker activations. But this plan that we've developed, it's aspirational, and it's contingent upon our ability to staff up these locations.
Right. Another thank you. A different question, it is about a couple of the comments early on from the public about people not having, call it the phone line or the internet access. Would a notice be sent to them, to those 100,000 people, such that they know that yes, curbside pickup would be available?
That's an excellent question. And I know our public affairs team recently mailed out a direct mail notice. I'm going to let our Chief of Community Programs and Partnerships speak to print notices and what our communication strategy is for informing the public about SFPL to go. Michelle, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we did recently send out a notice to patrons who have no email listed in their accounts or only print receiving patrons. We sent them a letter translated into 4 languages that explained where we are now and how we are working toward eventually reopening. Once we do have the SFPL to go service in place, we will again message those patrons with the information about how to access materials. And then once people do start using phone service or different services to request things, they will go back to receiving their notice by mail that their holds are available for them to pick up. So those will all be through print notices.
Great. So the public's comment is addressed. So thank you so much for the thought ahead, because apparently the public made a comment is not aware of the thing that has been done. My last question, it is since on media, it's about the face covering. We know in the media there will always be some odd occasions whereby someone would just not have facial covering. So how would staff be protected from those people who do not comply with the facial coverings?
Thank you, Commissioner Lee. It's an excellent question. And before the pandemic, during the pandemic, the health and safety of library workers is our top priority. And the SFPL to go service model has accounted for the health and safety of our library staff. The library patrons will not be able to enter the building. This will essentially be a front door grab and go takeout service akin to what we see in retail. In addition, thanks to the generosity of the Friends and Foundation of the San Francisco Public Library, we've been able to acquire what's called sneeze guards. And these are sturdy glass barriers that we can station on the tables where our staff will be placing the bags of items for pickup. We will have our patrons queued up outside the building. We will have library security present to help ensure the physical distancing and also to enforce the public's requirement to have facial coverings. So that has been an important consideration throughout this planning process.
Yeah, I am relieved to see the plan. There is a safety officer there to ward off the people who do not believe in protecting others. So thank you very much for, again, for the team and for the leaders to work with all the stakeholders to have this plan together. It's great.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Lee. Let's go to Commissioner Ono. And then after that, we're going to have Commissioner Wong, and then we'll go to Commissioner Wolf.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for being on this at this meeting. I do want to take this time to thank all of staff at SFPL for everything that you have been doing during this closure and this crisis. You make me so proud to be part of this commission and part of this organization. I do want to thank everyone that's been also involved in developing all of the plans and all of the preparation for our SFPL and our reopening, SFPL to go and reopening. I think the plans are very thorough, they're well thought out, easy to understand, they meet the needs of all of the patron comments that I've seen that have been submitted and also that I've heard from. And also, I'm glad to hear that they've been approved by and also, I'm also glad to see that we do have plans to make sure that we do have reopenings in all of the supervisorial districts. I'm that there will be a meet and confer, and I hope that goes well. My question that I have is, Michelle, you had mentioned that we sent out notices in 4 languages. Could you please tell me what 4 languages those are?
Sure. We're required by the city's language access ordinance to send every notice out in Chinese, Spanish, and Filipino, as well as English. Sorry.
Okay. I know we have a big Russian population in some of the branches. How will they have access to any of this material or these notices?
I'll make sure that we get things translated in Russian, but Russian at this time is not one of our one of the city's required translation languages under for language isolation. So
okay, so it's just the 4 now. It used to be 7, so
right.
It's 4. Okay, thank you. My other question is, I know the bookmobile has been discussed about why it can't be used. I do understand how narrow and how restrictive it is. Is that the main reason that the bookmobile is not part of any of the initial phases of reopening?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Ono. We received the city office's safety protocols and the guidance from the Office of the City Administrator in late May. I think it was May 26th. So ever since that time, we've been working hard with our primary focus to reopen our physical library locations. We have begun talking internally about how bookmobile services may be able to help fill some of the gaps in our plan. And it's just very early because of the limited square footage on our bookmobiles. We do not feel that it would be safe to have patrons inside the bookmobile at the same time as our library staff, but we still think the bookmobiles may have some utility in going to neighborhoods without physical access to a library and setting up some tabling outside of the bookmobile to distribute library materials. So really using the bookmobiles as the mobile outreach vehicles that they are to still try to get physical books in the hands of our residents. Our Chief of Programs and Partnerships, Michelle Jeffers, she oversees our mobile outreach services unit. Michelle, anything you want to add?
I think you explained it really well, Michael. The bookmobile team is right now looking at the neighborhoods where we may not be very close to one of the locations we're looking at to open, to find alternate locations that they could park up and do that kind of direct delivery service on a frequent basis, week after week.
Thank you. My other comment is I do appreciate all of the care that is being taken for both staff and the patrons to make sure that everyone's safe and protected during this reopening. So thank you again.
So at this particular time, thank you, Commissioner Ono. Let's have Commissioner Wong.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone who is present, both from library staff, management, and the public. I have no questions. I'm glad that we have been working on plans for curbside pickup, and that we finally have something approved. So thank you so much to the library leadership and management for pushing that through. I know it's taken some time and a lot of hard work to get here, and the staff as well that helped put that together. My only comment is that, of course, it seems like a platitude to say this now, but of course, these are incredibly difficult times, and I know that we have said that a lot. The media has said this a lot. We've been saying it to a lot to each other. But I think in these moments, it is especially important for us to zoom out and try to maintain the same perspective that we always have maintained. I think it's important to remember that this body, the Library Commission, the library staff, library leadership, we're all on the same team here. And the notion that any one of these parties is, quote unquote, out to get another party is deeply concerning to me. And I don't think, first of all, that that's true. I don't think anybody ought to think that that's true. One of my personal privileges and joys of serving on the Library Commission is that I get to be surrounded by people who are interested in serving the public. And that is a very particular and very special type of person. And so when we think about these plans and the actions of certain people and the decisions that they make, I encourage everyone to weigh in their perspective and know that everybody has a hard job right now, and everybody has to balance many, many factors. For example, taking the comments that are published for this meeting, we see one side, the public, who's clamoring for curbside pickup and to reopen the libraries as soon as possible, and even pushing the envelope on how aggressively the library ought to do so. On the other hand, we have some other parties that are wanting to slow down the process, right? And so even in that example alone, we have a very delicate balancing act to do the best job that we can here. And so my only encouragement for whoever might be listening is that everybody here has a hard job to do, and that we trust, because we trust in their abilities, that we trust that they're trying to balance as best as they can and make the best decision as they can. I don't think anybody here is out to cause any direct harm to anyone, that anybody's trying to explicitly extract some sort of gain at the cost of anybody else. It is just a very complex situation, and that is that. And it just takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of discussing to do that. And I trust that our all parties involved have been doing their best. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment, Commissioner Wong. Commissioner Wolf.
Hello, thank you. I just wanted to make a couple of quick comments. First of all, I wanted to acknowledge and thank the team for thinking about the socioeconomic impact and issues about the communities around the city and what they need and who need to be served as a priority. So thank you for being so attentive to that. I also, just picking up on what Pete recently said, I agree that this has been an incredibly complicated balancing act to meet those very strict requirements to ensure staff safety while also responding to the incredible desire and need of the community for having their library back. And that's a very delicate balancing act. And so I just want to thank the team at the library for working on this. And finally, I think that any plan of action, all best plans of action, often need to be re-examined once they're put into place. And so I just want to be sure that there is a procedure in place or a process to reevaluate how things are going in a regular way to make sure that the teams in different branches can pivot, can readdress procedures and processes that meet the needs of that community, because there will necessarily be adjustments that need to be made. And as we have witnessed, the challenges of this virus are constantly changing and our knowledge base changes. So I just want to be sure that there is a very robust plan in place to constantly reevaluate and update and make those necessary changes that balance, that continue to balance, keeping the staff safe and providing essential services to the community. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Wolf, for your comments. Looking to see John's hand, I think that has still been up. Commissioner Vice President Mall. Susan, you can unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. I'm not going to take up everyone's time concurring with my fellow commissioners, but I basically agree with everything everyone has said. I think right now, what's most important for the public is that Michael and Michelle and anyone who is involved in the communications, that I think that the public has felt so whipsawed about instructions and what's okay to do and what's not okay to do and openings and closings, that I think that whatever the library does, though I agree with Commissioner Wolf that it'll have to be reevaluated probably and some modifications might have to be made, but that it's really clear and that people aren't confused and having a million questions, which just causes more anxiety and more confusion. You know, even down to how you line up, or are you going to do it by time to get your book? I think people just want to be able to leave the library with something in their hot hand. And I think that will actually be very calming. But I just think how it's done at this point, I think people are raw, I really do, from all the governmental proclamations. Okay, so that's sort of my overall thing. And then I have a couple really fast questions. How many people actually got a letter in those 4 languages, a hard copy letter about what's happening?
I can answer that question.
Good.
Approximately 10,000 people.
10,000?
Yes.
Okay, because we've heard 100,000.
No, it was 10,000 that don't have an email address associated with their library account and receive only print notices.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing is, Michael, do you have any idea how long the lag time would be between the time people made a request and the time that they could actually pick up a book?
That's a great question. It all depends. It depends on whether the book is on the shelf, available. It depends on whether the book is already checked out and has, you know, scores of people waiting to get their hands on it. It could be as mundane as the item is in the book drop and has to sit for 72 hours before we can scan it in and activate the request again. I would say on average, in the best case scenario, accounting for 5-day-a-week service in the branches and 7-day-a-week service in the main, it could take a few days on average in the best case scenario. One thing I've learned about the library staff is that they are continuously improving and streamlining and looking for efficiencies and processes. That's how their brains work, and they're extremely good at their job. So I have no doubt that after we launch this service, we will pick up speed and how we operate and streamline workflows. But I just ask for the public's patience as we stand up this service in a new frontier for us.
No, exactly. No, I understand that, but I'm hoping that when you communicate with the patrons, that there is a, you know, some discussion of how long this will take, so people have some sense of when they can pick up their books.
Absolutely. And just for some additional perspective, approximately 20%, give or take, of our library collections, if not more, are always out in circulation. So we have hundreds of thousands of patrons that have been hanging on to their books and unable to return them since March. So we'll probably spend a week just checking in stuff, and we'll have to phase our activities such that we process the returns and then fulfill the hold request for the thousands of items that have been sitting on our shelves since March waiting to be picked up. And it's gonna take us probably, a couple weeks before we get into a rhythm of pulling new requests off the shelves and making those items available for pickup, or fulfilling new requests, is what I'm trying to say. So out of the gate, there's going to be some circulation gymnastics that we're going to have to perform.
I think your task is Herculean. I really do. I mean, it's just, it sounds completely daunting, but I'm sure that you and the staff are up to the job.
Thank you so much for that vote of confidence.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Mall. Is there any other comments or discussions on this SFPL reopening report by the city librarian, which is our item for our primary item for this evening, and at this special library commission meeting?
I would like to clarify something that Michelle said earlier. Michelle mentioned that we pushed out print notices to approximately 10,000 patrons. And I just want her or our chief analytics officer to clarify the number, because I think there was some consideration about active patrons that have actually used the library and checked out materials in a certain period of time. Those were the individuals that had received the notice. Is that correct, Michelle?
Yeah, I can clarify. It was the 10,000 patrons are patrons who again do not have an email address or other notification method and have used the library in the last 3 years.
Okay, thank you.
And in addition to those print notices, of course, we sent out 300,000 emails to patrons who we do have email addresses for.
Thank you for clarifying, Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Seeing that we have completed our commission discussion on this, we're going to go ahead, and I'd like to take us to our third agenda item, which is approval of the minutes of June 18th, 2020. This is an action item required by the commission. But before we go into that, the minutes are there available, an explanatory document. We're going to go to our public comment for agenda item number 3. So operations, are there commenters available for agenda item number 3?
Madam President, there is one commenter at present.
Please put the commenter through.
Caller, your 3 minutes begins now.
Yes, this is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. We can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. Again, libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. I'm sorry to say that you completely overlooked my comment on the previous item, and we have quite a lot to say. The telephone method of alerting that you want to be considered for making public comment or be taken for public comment is a mess because there's noise, there's no visual cue, and when you press *3, you hear some kind of an announcement, but it's very hard to understand or impossible when other people are talking. So if you had any consideration for the public and its right to public comment, you would give a moment and say, is there any more public comment? We don't see anybody on the list. And then somebody in that pause could press *3. Instead, you zipped along and managed to exclude me, who you know is very interested in this issue. With respect to the minutes, the first item 1, general public comment, I said that for these people, the ones without internet access, there was absolutely no service with one exception. Leaving that out makes it make no sense. And when I talked about on item 3, I asked for a 30-second warning, not a 30-minute warning. And I requested speakers be that you announce speakers in advance who's on the list, and that you provide page numbers, not announce page numbers, but provide them. On the city librarian's report, I said that SFPL needed to focus on those without internet access and serving them so they wouldn't be left behind, not so that they wouldn't fall behind. The whole point is that you don't need to blame people for your having moved away from them. With respect to the opening, the public comment that I made on the reopening plan, I think that I said that there was a serious problem with the overlooking of librarians being participants, of the public being participants, and a whole range of items like non-circulating reference materials, periodicals, newspapers, magazines, history room materials, photocopy machine, computers, community room, and so on.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Operations, is there another commenter?
Madam President, there's an additional commenter.
Thank you. If you would allow them to comment, please.
Caller, your 3 minutes begins now.
Caller, are you there,
Excuse me,
caller?
hello?
Yes,
Hello?
we can hear you.
Okay, all right. I agree with everything Mr. Warfield had said. Unfortunately, the library staff has shown enormous contempt and disregard for the thousands of us who don't have internet access. And we need for you to come to terms with that fact. You are paid and you are employed to serve all San Franciscans, regardless of their income status, their ethnic status, or any other status you could come up with. I also don't think the staff has addressed a crucial question with regard to your plan to reopen the library. If a patron returns an item, the patron is entitled, maybe that's not even a strong enough word, is legally entitled to proof that they returned the item that has for decades conventionally been a piece of paper, a receipt. Just like when you go to buy something in a store, you usually can get a receipt. Otherwise, the system will rapidly fall apart, deteriorate, and throw us all into court. I don't know. I'm sorry, there's some noise here. I am, as I said before, very distressed that the union apparently has been left out of the process of this very complex. Nobody could possibly doubt that it's a very complex, trying time for all of us, not the least of whom are the patrons. And I have many, many items out which I'd like to return. I'd like to know when I can do it and when I can get proof that I've returned them. You need to address this question sooner or later, and sooner would be much preferred. Good luck, and I appreciate your efforts to fix a very broken system. Good luck. Bye.
Thank you for your comment. Operations, are there any further commenters on the line?
Madam President, there are no additional commenters, and I've cleared the raised hand.
Okay, thank you so much. So commissioners, we have the minutes of June 18th, 2020 before us. Is there any discussion on the minutes, commissioners?
Hello.
Okay, seeing that there is none, no discussion. I heard a hello. I just want to make sure it's not one of our commissioners. Okay. Seeing that there is no discussion on the minutes that's before us now. Is there a motion to approve?
This is Commissioner Wolf. I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Let the record stand that Commissioner Wolf has made a motion. Is there a second?
Second, Commissioner Mall.
Commissioner Mall has seconded. Is there any additional discussion? Okay.
Madam President, I see that Commissioner Lee's hand is raised.
Commissioner Lee, did you have discussion?
No, I think the other commissioner already did the two that I was going to suggest.
Thank you so much. Let's do this. Take his hand down for now. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to do all those in favor that say aye, and we're going to have to do it so that we can hear each one of your names as opposed to the unison that we do when we're in the public face-to-face. We have to do it different and when we're virtually. So all those in favor say aye, and I'm going to do a bit of a roll call here. If you're and I will start off with Commissioner Wolf.
Aye.
Commissioner Lee.
Aye.
Commissioner Wong.
Aye.
Commissioner Mall.
Aye.
And Commissioner Ono.
Aye.
Let the record stand that all the commissioners that are present have said aye, and all those opposed.
The motion passes.
Thank you very much. So we are going to now move to the final item of our agenda this evening, and that is for adjournment, which requires an action from the commission. And we are going to open this up to our final public comment for this evening. Operations, will you let us know how many people are in the queue for the final public comment?
Madam President, at present, there's one commenter in the queue.
Okay, will you please put the commenter through for public comment, please?
Caller, your 3 minutes begins now.
Yes, this is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. You can reach us at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. Again, Library Users Association 2004@yahoo.com. I've said this before and I'll say it again. This time I have a little bit to add to the comment that I think you should not end this meeting with your continued disenfranchisement of every commissioner and all of the people that you represent without insisting that there be an item on the agenda which used to be called new business, and that was an item just before adjournment. And the explanation for that item was this item is to allow commissioners to introduce new agenda items for consideration. By leaving this out, you've completely chopped off your ability, your right to publicly say what you think would and could and should usefully be on future agendas. And that's very important. As an example, today Commissioner Mall asked a very important question about something that was missing, one of many things that were missing from the perspective of the patrons. I think that's a situation where what was missing, whether it's the particular question or other questions, should be something that you can bring up and something that you can say you'd like to see on a future agenda item. And the public could certainly say, that's a really good idea. How about expanding it? How about having a kind of an environmental impact report? For example, what's this about 1 year before presumably partial service is restored? How about when people are told that their material is available, how are they told? Are they going to be told by telephone the way they requested the material? Are they going to be mailed a notice? How long will it be held? There's a whole range of questions that I think from a patron perspective have not been clearly addressed. And as far as environmental impact report, the library does a lot of things for folks. It provides community rooms, it provides computers, it provides photocopy machines. Somebody mentioned today 3D printers. What about including the librarians more and the public more? What about non-circulating material or periodicals and so on, newspapers and magazines? Those are all things that you need to consider from a patron perspective. How are they going to be requested and gotten, and the notifications provided, how long held? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Operation, are there any further commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there's an additional commenter.
Thank you. If you would put the commenter through, please.
Caller, your 3 minutes begins now.
Hello, my name is Luis Zuniga. I'm a 3610 who works at the public library. I understand that the situation is actually fluid and it's very complicated because of the situation in which we find ourselves. I've heard the comments from the other gentleman, the previous gentleman, but the library staff is innovative. We are resilient and we are imaginative, but we actually also need the support of management. And for that, we need for the representation of our union to actually be in the room, heated, and actually be paid attention to. Furthermore, in spite of the fact that we are actually being, in some ways, lambasted by some of the patrons, we are also committed. It is a vocation for many of us to actually be workers at the public library. We are proud of actually working at the public library. You know, a tradition that actually has been in place in America since Ben Franklin. So let me actually just reiterate. The library staff will do our duty. We will do it with alacrity, but we need the support both of management and for management to actually include the staff in the discussions so that we may reopen not merely with speed, but with efficiency and with safety. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any further callers in the queue?
Madam President, there are no additional commenters.
Thank you. So hearing that there is none, our general and final public comment is closed for the evening. So commissioners, we have our final item that we need to take action on, which is to adjourn this meeting. And at this particular time, do we have a motion to?
I move that we pass a motion to adjourn our meeting tonight.
Thank you so much. That was Commissioner Mall for the record. And is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. That was Commissioner Ono who seconded. So we're just going to go through very quickly and just do a roll call just to adjourn the meeting this evening. When I call your name, if you can just say aye. Commissioner Wolf? Commissioner Lee?
Commissioner Lee, you're muted.
Aye.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay. Commissioner Wong?
Aye.
Commissioner Mall? And Commissioner Ono?
Aye.
Okay, and then and I also included to adjourn the meeting. Are there any individuals that say are a nay in adjourning the meeting right now? Seeing that there are none, we adjourn this meeting at 6:05 p.m. I want to thank everybody for your participation this evening as part of the San Francisco Public Library Commission meeting. Thank you all.
The motion passes. Thank you.